Once you define your multi-billion-dollar problem, you've got to think about the billion-dollar solution to that problem. I learned working with Steve Jobs what Steve called zooming. That meant zooming out, connecting the dots, and then zooming in and simplifying once you connected the dots. Let me give you an example. Steve Jobs went to Reed College. He fell in love with calligraphy. And then years later, after founding Apple, he was invited to Xerox PARC, Palo Alto Research Center, and he had the chance to see what they were working on in terms of computer systems at very high prices, $40,000, $50,000 systems that would enable people to create graphics on a screen, to be able to move those graphics around using a mouse pointing device, and then to be able to print out on a high-priced laser printer. What Steve did was to say, gee, imagine if I could take the inventions they did for $50,000 and be able to create something that was affordable to people as a personal computer that could be sold for just a couple of $1,000s. And that's what led to the development of the Macintosh, which became the first commercially successful media computer. So there was a billion-dollar problem. How do we take publishing, which is an industry that was very expensive to publish a book of any form, and make it possible for people, individuals with no technical knowledge, to find something really easy to use, affordable at the same time, to become personal publishers. That became desktop publishing. That was the solution to a multi-billion-dollar problem. Years later, I took Steve's same approach of connecting the dots and said, we need something that's a follow-on problem that's as big as desktop publishing, and I called that desktop presentation. Why was that exciting? Because computers were becoming more and more powerful in the mid-1980s, and it meant that we were now able to take advantage of color, of large displays, of even projectors, and say, what if we enabled people to not have to print things out as we did with desktop publishing, but if they could actually create presentations using a product that we invested in called PowerPoint and be able to use multimedia, including video and animation and other types of graphics, and put on presentations. And eventually, when the World Wide Web became possible, they could actually send these presentations over the internet. But that came years later. So desktop presentation was a gigantic problem that needed to be solved. Apple solved it with the invention of QuickTime, the invention of other technologies which enabled the Macintosh to become the first personal computer solution that enabled people to do presentations of high-quality multimedia. That was the solution. That was the better way. Well, we could take almost any industry you could think of and say there are multi-billion-dollar problems. There are problems in transportation. An example is someone like Uber or someone like Lyft who said, we can take the taxi industry, huge multi-billion-dollar industry, and we can find a better way to solve that for the customer, in this case, normal people who wanted to be able to get a car service when they wanted it, where it wanted, for a more affordable price. And so became an entirely new industry of personalized transportation on a different model than hailing a cab. Same thing true for Airbnb, where people had extra rooms in their house. They could rent those rooms out, and it was possible now to build an entire service that made it possible for people to get a lower cost hospitality service than they had possible before Airbnb. Now think of what this means in terms of the evolution of technology. For the last decade or so, platform technologies have become increasingly important in the technology world. We call this SaaS, software as a service. But now we're starting to see that those technologies are commoditizing, that a platform is just a commodity. So where is the value? The value is in domain expertise. It's being able to say, I can take a domain and connect the dots of that domain, which means in the case of Airbnb, the hospitality industry connected with the technology industry of a platform, and be able to create a broker, a middleman layer that is able to use technology to enable people over the web, even over mobile devices, to be able to instantly find a car service that will come and meet them, and they can track it in real time on their smartphone and be able to get a very affordable product, ease of use, turns into an amazingly great, better way to do things solution. And we can see that time and again where people now saying, I can use these commodities of technology platforms, but I add domain expertise. That's where the connecting the dots is. Because technology innovation occurs at the edge of an industry. In this case, it's the edge of the personal transportation industry, or the edge of the hospitality industry, or the edge of e-commerce industries in the case of companies like The RealReal, which is really a consignment type model enabling particularly women to be able to get high fashion products at a substantial discount if they buy slightly used products. So there's a lot of innovation going on by connecting the dots between different domain areas of expertise, leveraging off of technology, which is becoming more and more commoditized. And in the case of the exponential growth, the tsunami effect of new technologies, of the cloud, of mobility, of unstructured data analytics, of sensors capturing real-time data, of machine learning, all of these technologies, which are growing rapidly and becoming more and more affordable, they are commoditizing quickly. And it means that the entry point for people to start new companies leveraging these technologies becomes extremely affordable. And the real differentiation comes by using the zooming technique that I learned from Steve Jobs of connecting dots between different domains and creating entirely new problems that can be solved in very novel, innovative ways. And this is the solution that separates the old way of doing things from the new way. And the other point of Steve Jobs zooming that's so important is once you connect the dots, then you have to go in and simplify. So you zoom out to connect the dots, but you zoom in to simplify. And you want to make the simplification all about the user experience. Remember, it's always the customer. It's always the customer that differentiates these businesses. And therefore, Apple has become the premier example in the world of how to make user experience exceptional. But it's happening over and over again with many new companies that are saying, put the customer first. Amazon does it brilliantly by putting the customer first and using the power of data analytics to be able to predict what they think those customers are going to want next based on what they know about those customers. And then being able to deliver more and more frequently, meaning even the same day, those products to the customer, so you get the immediacy of the impulse buy. And this is the world we're living in today, a world of affordability, of disruptive prices, at the same time, a 10x improvement in customer service.